Good evening, everyone. My name is Joy Wright, and you are here at Meet the Middle School Principals. We'll advance to the next slide. Let everyone introduce themselves. I'm the lead learner principal at King Philip Middle School on 100 King Philip Drive in West Hartford, serving sixth, seventh, and eighth grade students. Who's
Oh
next below
boy,
me?
I don't remember the address for Sedgwick. I'm kidding. Andrew Clapsaddle, principal at Sedgwick. Chad?
And Chad Ellis, interim principal at Bristow, 34 Highland Street.
And so this is your first night actually starting the transition to the middle school journey. And so just so that we're clear, when we talk about this, let's just talk about what you're probably some of you experiencing right now, and if not, what you'll soon experience as we think about middle school. So let's talk about some of those changes. You're starting to see some changes already, possibly with your middle schooler. And the first thing we think about when we think about middle school is physical development. All of a sudden, physical changes start to happen, but these physical changes are uneven. So we have some sixth grade students, for example, that might be nearing 6 feet, and others who are, just getting into 5 feet. And so it's some develop faster than others. That's part of puberty. It's part of metabolic changes or help me somebody.
Yeah, you got it.
Metabolic.
Yes, metabolic. I had it. Metabolic changes that happen and fluctuate at different times. The other things that we're seeing too are periods of high energy. All of a sudden, it's like the energizer bunny, and then these periods too of just like fatigue and what we might call slowfulness and laziness, but that's all part of it. Really high energy, but then tired at sometimes, and clearly hormonal fluctuations, those things that I probably wouldn't go back to as a middle schooler, but hey, they happen. The next thing that we start to see intellectually, you are starting to see some personalities really kind of develop. Intensive brain remodeling happens at this particular stage. And so there's frequent questioning, and questioning of things that you say, ways that you say it, rules, analytical questioning. All of those kinds of things are completely normal as the kids are trying to figure out their way in the world. What's different? It's kind of like they're awoke, right? Or as the kids say, woke to something is different and new. And I am a person and I have some agency. Those things start to happen, and increased awareness again of the world around them. And so it's at this particular time that things that they didn't notice about justice or injustice, about fairness, all of those things really start to take a sense. And then you'll see some students who become these global citizens already, while others are just kind of starting to notice the world around them. And then we have varied ability levels. And so at some point too, you'll see athletes and those who are interested in athletics all of a sudden really tune into those skills. But even so, there's uneven abilities in terms of intellectual ability as well as athletic ability. As physically, if I go back to that, they're still trying to find themselves. You see at this stage, kids don't know how tall they're growing or how wide their arm span is. And so things might get knocked over, including people from time. And it's not always malicious. It's just growing into who they are. And then finally, we see social and emotional development happening too. So mood fluctuations galore happen at this stage. And so you go from everything's a crisis to nothing is important. And sometimes that might happen in the span of an hour or over a course of days, and that is completely normal and natural. Children at this stage start to copy their peers. We start to wonder as their parents, do we matter anymore? Because it seems like you only care what Susie Q is doing and not what your mom says. Perfectly natural as they're trying to find their place. And then this desire for independence, and wanting to stay connected to you, but not necessarily, because they're trying to find out who they are as they grow into their personhood. Sometimes with that independence comes a little bit of secrecy as well. And it's not about trying to hide things, but not always telling you the things that they would have, either that's happening in their lives, in their friends' lives, as they struggle for their independence. So this is all might be for some going, yeah, that's I'm seeing that, I'm seeing that. And then for others, it might not seem like something that is so apparent yet, but it shall be. So tonight's focus, if we go to the next slide, is really for you as the two rules before we get started. Rule one, remember, don't panic. I know I said a lot of things. I know some of you are going, oh my goodness, is that what we need to experience? Yes, but don't panic. And if you forget rule number one, then just go to rule number two. Laugh often. If you don't have a sense of humor, working with your middle schooler, whether they are in your home or we get to work with them all the time, then I think all of us have middle school age students, right? At this stage, all of us as principals have middle age students, so we laugh a lot. So remember those things. And our goals for tonight are simply to familiarize you with our middle school program. So we want you to know that. And then we want to provide you with some information to help you navigate this transition to middle school. As we are preparing for this next stage, we want to be a help to you to start that process. And then we'll talk to you about how individually we'll do that at our school level. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. While we're not in an auditorium the way that we're used to being in one, we do hope that you will find this information helpful. And if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, and we have a moderator and we'll be able to take your questions a little later on.
All right, welcome everyone. We were just chatting before, saying how much we really wanted to be in an auditorium with everyone because we find that to be fun and engaging. And we're going to do our best to engage everyone, although you can only see us and we can't see you. So we're going to segue into a couple of things that we find over the years that our sixth graders worry about. And so we use the word worry, as Joy had said, that when students come to us, there's things that they're thinking about or things they may have heard from an older sibling. And so we're just going to run through a couple of these quickly because we feel like these will be on students' minds, but really in the scheme of things, we're prepared to support them and address these particular things. So one is lockers. So students, although in their elementary school days, they do get a locker. I have 2 elementary school age students and 1 middle schooler. And I will tell you that the elementary school age kids, there's no locks. They just kind of throw their stuff in there. And at the end of the day, they get it out. Well, we do ask kids to actually lock their locker, put their valuables in there as well as their books. And they do have to figure out how to navigate a lock. So I probably can speak for all 3 of us when we spend about at least 2 full weeks with all the students in advisory or otherwise, having them practice and practice some more. And then they practice some more until they can figure out how, and some more, to get their lockers right. And only when they're ready to go do we let them kind of move on their own. But we do have ways to teach them how to do their lockers, but it really, after the first couple of weeks, becomes secondhand. So getting through crowded hallways without getting lost. Actually, we're going to talk a little bit about that as we transition about our web program, our orientation program in all 3 middle schools. Very clear signage in most of the schools. I mean, for the first couple of days in 6th grade, our students will stay with their core group of teachers and actually be walked to their different classes until they memorize the route. And only when they're ready to go on their own do kids kind of transition on their own. So crowded hallways, getting lost usually doesn't happen because we have some systems in place to help students kind of navigate that. Having more than one teacher. So I think that we should put what parents are worried about as well as the students having more than one teacher. So you're going from one classroom teacher and a few specialist teachers to multiple teachers. But the way we have our teams set up as academic teams, although there are multiple teachers, there's a very clear and organized way of communication that we have at the schools that we'll get into a little bit later. So we will work with you so that you as parents will understand our team dynamic and then how to navigate those multiple teachers. So lunchrooms, Although this year at the secondary level, we really haven't had lunch in the lunchrooms. Um, Student ID, so if your child has purchased lunch before, the ID number that they use to purchase lunch will be the same one they use when they come to middle school. So again, we walk them through the lunch line. We give them a little bit more time. They'll get used to the system, but one question that parents typically have are how are lunches organized? As of right now, they're organized by grade level teams. Typically, our sixth grade students all eat at the same time, although they may be in some different areas. But we don't have sixth, seventh, and eighth grade all mixed together. It's by grade level. Yes, thanks, Dave. Kids being mean, fitting in, and being embarrassed. I'll lump all those together because that kind of has some negative things that maybe kids are talking about. So we are here as not just administrators, but as teachers to support you and your children through this whole middle school process. So are there going to be times when someone says something mean or says something, it happens, but we're here to support. In other words, we ask students to advocate for themselves. They're going to have trusted teachers in the building. Obviously, if you hear something, we would encourage you to reach out to us or the teachers to speak to us so that we can resolve the problem. You know, we want to make sure that your child feels supported, but we're also able to address the issue. Next slide, Dave. All right, so focus areas, equity and inclusion. So we've sent out a lot of communications this year from the district and from each school about our focus this year for social and emotional learning and social justice. And I would say in all the years past, all three middle schools have programs that address character education, equity, but this year is a little bit special because I think there's more alignment. We've set up some structures that we can communicate better, and students at all three middle schools are getting a similar experience as it relates to those things. But our focus this year, in addition to academics as usual, is really supporting all the children, whether it be remote, whether they be in hybrid, or no matter what kind of plan that they're in, to make sure that they feel supported and welcome in whatever environment they may be in. So as we transition to the fall, although there are some unknowns about what it may look like in the fall, I can say that all three schools are going to be moving forward and continuing our work with social justice and social emotional learning, as well as character education. So we do have an integrated team approach, a community within a community. So although some of the schools like KP and Sedgwick have larger grade levels, like maybe 250 to 300 kids, those 300 kids are broken into three teams of 100 students. And at Bristow, they have one single team for each grade level. And so although the number looks big, it's really a community within a community, which means those students actually share the same group of academic teachers. And so it's like a cohort, a smaller cohort. So it's streamlined communication for you as a parent. It allows our teachers to have conversations. There's a team time each day where teachers can get together and talk about students, to identify kids that are excelling in their classes, and then some that may be having some difficulty, so that we can address those and put some things in place to help support the students. So our curriculum is always based on the needs of our students, inquiry, exploration. We want our kids doing stuff, exploring stuff, forming their own ideas. And then the last bullet here is WEB. So WEB stands for Where Everyone Belongs, and it's the name of our sixth grade orientation program. So all three schools have a WEB program. And what's great about WEB is towards the end of the year, we ask all of our seventh graders, soon to be eighth graders, to step up and be leaders in our building. And so we identify our student leaders that will be eighth graders. And we have a system in place where we come to school a couple days before school begins, where we bring all of our sixth graders in, introduce them to our WEB leaders. They do some team building exercises, but more importantly, your sixth grade student is going to meet, I guess, an upperclassman. I don't think we really call it that, do we, Joy and Chad? Eighth grade upperclassman, now we don't call it that. Someone in eighth grade that has been in sixth grade and seventh grade before, knows the building, knows the systems, can be a go-to person in the building as well as their teacher. So that's something we've been doing for about 5 or 6 years now. We find it to be very effective and very rewarding for our students. All right, next slide. So connecting kids after school, which is kind of funny because we end school now at the middle school at 1:30, and there really isn't a lot of after school programs. But I'm going to talk about what I hope to be in place again in the fall, when hopefully we're at the end of the COVID crisis. So we have some unified arts, or unified programs. Basically, we have sports programs that take our students that may have special needs or other disabilities and connect them with our other students, whether it be sports or it be drama, because a unified theater program where kids perform. I think that's one of the things I really miss about this year, not having the interaction of all of our students in the group setting. And so I think, we all hope that those things are in place. So after school programs are going to be a little bit different in each school, but really what we want is students to get involved in something outside of the academic day. So there's clubs, there's activities, there's all kinds of things. There's intramural sports. In a normal year, we do team trips or team building exercises. So there are some grade levels that take a trip for the day and go to Camp Slope or some other places, or teams will decide to do things in-house where we really get the kids to interact and meet one another, because obviously they're coming from different schools. So we want to make sure that they connect. And then the clubs and activities, as I said, are different in each school, but we'll share those at the beginning of the year. And then community involvement projects. Again, each school's a little bit different, but the same. So we try to get our kids involved in supporting community things, like whether it be a donation of coats in the wintertime or a food collection or can collection for the food pantry. All those great and wonderful things. We want them to be involved, not just at school, but in the community as well.
Can I say, Andrew, though,
Of
while
course.
it's different, we do have after school activities this year. They're just virtual.
Yes, virtual. I apologize. Yes, we do have virtual ones. Yes, ma'am.
So if you want to give it a sense, just like we would have sent you before, look at our websites. There, at each of our schools, there is a great menu of ways that we're bringing kids together. So.
All right.
All right, I'll take it from here. Dave, if you go to the next one, please. Good evening, everybody. And, I too join Andrew and Joy wishing that we were in person. It is a little bit strange talking to a screen. Normally when we have a staff meeting, we at least have everybody's icon that we can look at. We just trust that there are people in the audience right now. So we know there's at least one person, because Dave, who's behind the scenes in the chat, is feeding us some of the questions that are coming up, which we will address later. But in a typical year, if we were face-to-face, this slide, I would be talking to you a little bit and showing you how to access a sense of the curriculum that your kids would be learning. And we're not going to do that tonight, but what I would say, if you're interested in learning more, there is a nice set of guides. We call it Curriculum in the Middle. If you were to go to the district website, find the link for the offices under curriculum and instruction, you would find a nice articulation for grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8 for each of the subject areas. And it's easy, and it has contact information there as well for the curriculum department supervisors if you had questions. But the real fun comes next. I get to talk to you about the wonderful alliteration, the paradoxes of parenting people in puberty. Fantastic. So if you go to the next slide for me, Dave. So this is the emotional roller coaster, right? So I have a 7th grader. Joy and Andrew have kids in middle school as well. And for those of you, especially if this is your first child in middle school, we are going to have a front row seat. It's an emotional roller coaster for the kids, as Joy alluded to, but it's also one for us. And we get to sit in the front seat, and often we sort of experience it like this. All right, so it's a little bit of fun, but again, there are moments where you're, what just happened? And there will be times that, we have all been in this collectively for probably about 60 some odd years. I think we did the math. And even with all that together, we will pick up the phone from time to time with our own kids. I'll be like, Joy, my daughter just did this. Why did that happen? Right? So as parents, one of the things that I can say to you is that, as administrators, the counselors we have, the teachers, we are here to support you and work with you as partners. And there are times where Honestly, there are times where I have conversations with families at Bristow, and it's some just commiseration about the experience of being a middle school parent. But despite that, that's obviously a little intended humor there, but there are some wonderful things that go along with that. David, if you'd hit the next one, please. So things to think about. Joy started us off a little bit about some of the changes, and some of those changes are that peers do become more influential. Up to this point, really, the parents have been, the kids go to you. But with all of the changes, what is, socially acceptable, what is socially driving kids becomes a little bit more influential. On the plus side, we'll have, there we go. Parents are always going to be the greatest influence. All right. So no matter what, there are times where you may think that they're not listening, but they're listening. And no matter what, you will always be the greatest influence. The next thing, we try to teach the kids to look ahead. Right. So this is a time where we're starting to teach our kids to think about the future. We are trying to prepare them for life, but also for high school, for future academics, for career, for college, for citizenship. But the good news is that while we are teaching them to look ahead, few decisions now are life altering. That is one of the beautiful things about middle school. And I would say one of the toughest things, and I said this to I saw some shocked faces in the audience last year. This is actually a very safe time for kids to meet with a lack of success. And I don't mean pervasive lack of success, but it's a safe time for them to experience what it means to fail. Right? And again, not pervasive failure, but I tried to do one thing and it didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. It's safe, right? Because for thinking about the type of academic experience the kids have, they're not collecting credits, so they don't have to worry about a particular assignment tanking them and what the future is going to hold. It is a very safe place to learn about things like resilience. If you meet with something where you're not successful, how do you react, right? That learning experience. Do I pick myself up, brush myself off and continue? And then what type of success comes from that type of action? All right, third on our list, we have kids do want this opportunity. They need the opportunities for independence. But again, at the end of the day, they're also going to need your boundaries. All right, so kids are going to push. They're going to want to assert themselves. But at the same time, they're still going to need you to impose those limitations, even if it's something that they seem to balk at or chafe at. You are still important in that role. The fourth one, setting that bar high. We do sort of connected to number two. We do want them to have high expectations for themselves. We do want them to learn to set those high expectations, but at the same time, they're not there yet. So we really shouldn't be disappointed if they're unable to reach those expectations. Really, it's about if we can set those goals, we want to set them high, we want them to reach for it, but if they don't make it, that's okay. We want them to learn about what it takes to go into goal setting, what type of hard work it takes, perseverance, resilience to achieve that. The times that they are successful, great, but those times that they don't reach those goals, those are where really some strong life lessons come in that are going to carry them through the future. And then lastly, your children will heed you. They're just not on the same timetable. And there will be a day where you hear them say, or maybe you won't hear them say, but I can guarantee you they will say that I sound just like my mother or father. I will say now there are days where I open my mouth and my father's voice comes out. And I'm like, I don't know what just happened. I am somehow channeling my father, and it's right. In the moment, it's right. So it will happen to them too at some point. All right, so the next thing here, just really think about parenting. Our job, it is a full-time job. And just as Joy said earlier, rule number one and rule number two, take breaks to have fun. And more importantly, to listen without judging. That can be very, very difficult, right? Especially where, you'll start to see generational differences where, kids start to test different boundaries and things where, your value system things you've thought you've known and sort of expected your whole life, suddenly they may come to you with a slightly different perspective, and that's going to push on you a little bit. So this is a great time for growth for the kids, but also can be a great growth period for us as adults. And it really is, the ability to form those lasting relationships with your kids over time. A lot of that is going to be founded in how well we can listen to them over the next few years and how we can respond to them without that judgment. So at the end of the day, if you think about it, it's really about a balancing act. And our next little graphic here, just for some inspiration, it's about finding that right balance between how to, maintain your authority and your assertiveness as parents without being authoritarian, right? And at the same time, how to be sympathetic without, and I'll say in my words, being sympathetic without being a sucker, right? Learning when the kids are truly in need versus when they are, and they will, if they haven't already, they will try to test things and they will see how good they are at getting their way through some manipulation. It is a balancing act, and it is a tightrope walk. But again, the folks, whether it's the administrators of the school, the counselors, the teachers, we are here to work with you through that time. All right, and then Andrew's going to talk to us about ways to stay involved.
I almost made the mistake of talking with myself being muted. So stay involved. I'll speak for Sedgwick first in that it's difficult for parents to attend PTO meetings in the past because, you're getting off of work and the time, and if you have younger children, do you bring them with you? And I will tell you, at least from my lens, this year we've had such great turnout at PTO meetings where we would have just a few parents show up. We've had as many as 40 and 50. So what we're trying to do is find ways to get families involved. I think one of the things through this weird pandemic and presenting virtually is that we have discovered that sometimes meeting online and having these type of meetings is beneficial, that parents can do what they need to do and still come to our meetings, which is great. So I'm sure your child at some point will not want you to be involved at school. And we always say, don't listen to them. We want you. We want you to be part of what we do. So we all three schools have active PTOs. We want to hear from you to see what we can do to help support you at home. And then staying connected. You do have Power School log entries, I believe, at the elementary school. I put my elementary hat on for a second. My kids do, but it's a little bit limited. So when you come to us in 6th grade, your Power School login or the parent portal will be a little bit more robust. You'll be able to see grades and attendance and things like that. So we would encourage you to, keep tabs on your child, keep up on what they're doing, their grades, but also praise them. It's really important they get that positive feedback, especially as they navigate those middle school years as they're changing both physically and mentally. And, we encourage our students to advocate for themselves, but, as adults, we really should talk to them about their progress, ask them how they're doing, what things they could do differently, maybe even goal setting for themselves would be great. And then the most important thing is for them to develop responsibility. Supporting your kids in the beginning is a great idea, but you definitely should not be doing their homework for them. Resiliency is what Chad talked about, in that, it's okay if things don't work out the first time. They need to be able to work through that. I wasn't successful the first time, so now I got to keep on working on it. And then ownership for their own work and their progress. Really important things, really skills that will help them not only succeed in middle school, but will lay the foundation as they transition into high school and then into college. Next slide, Dave. And then establishing radio communications with the teachers and counselors. So even though all schools are a little bit different, your child will have a grade level counselor and a team of teachers. So we encourage parents at any time to reach out to either the team leader or the group of teachers if you have any questions about what's going on, and you need to keep informed about what's going on in the classroom. And then we are all partners in this. So maybe your first time to middle school, but we want to let you know that you are not alone. We don't expect that you're going to be able to just figure this out on your own. We're here to support you. Our offices are always open. You can call us at any time you want. And our goal really is for every child when they walk through any of our doors, to think of our schools as a happy place, some place they can reach success. And again, our goal is to get them prepared in developing the skills needed to be successful in high school and beyond.
Okay, so I want to say first of all that we're going to get to your questions. There's lots of questions, but let's just we'll finish with the presentation. So transition timeline. First of all, you started the process. You're here. This is the first step. Getting to know a little bit more. Bristow lottery letters were mailed January 24th, and the last date to inform the school as to your choice or decision will be March 19th, and that's you have a response card. Early April, they'll start going through down the list for acceptance, and if you have specific questions, put them in the chat, and Dr. Ellis can respond to those, so that you'll see our timeline. You'll have an opportunity to get to know each school so that you can make an informed decision. Course selection process, the window will be open. And so each of you, I hope have seen your email where you have a course selection form that just asks what language your child wants to take, what music, performance music, if they choose that they want to take that as well. And so it just gives us an idea. And there's 3 language choices, and they don't have to take a performance music, but they can. And so we ask that we have that information because it helps us with the balancing of our classes. Now, I will say you might have a child that's like, I don't know, I want to take Spanish. Wait, I think I want to do Chinese. Wait, I think I want to do French. That's okay. Make the best decision that you can make right now. And if they change it, call us, let us know that they're changing it. That's okay. I say up until kind of the end of the year is a good time. And then after that, we kind of start locking things in. Please make sure that you check your emails if you haven't seen that form, because it was sent out electronically. If you are a paper and pencil person, please reach out to your elementary school teacher, your 5th grade teacher, and they will give you the form in hard copy, and you can just mail it to either one of our schools or drop it off if you'd like. So some other things that you want to know: if you have a child with an IEP, there is a SEPTO night at the district level on February 23rd. And that's at 7 p.m. There will be virtual details sent out to those families, and so you should know that. Our school-specific virtual information nights are below. Bristow's having 2 on March 4th and March 8th at 6:30 p.m. KP's is on March 15th, along with Cedric, and March 15th, both of ours, and that's those are at 6:30 p.m. as well. And so information.
Why is yours in blue?
Because I changed mine in blue, and I'm KP Blue. That's why. Because I'm sorry, everyone. Mr. Clapsaddle sometimes brings out this competitiveness in me, but I had an opportunity. So make sure that you mark those on your calendar. If you cannot make it, it's okay. It'll be recorded. You will have access to all of them. So the beauty of this whole pandemic process and trying to make sure that we connect is that we discovered technology in a new way. And it has forced us, quite frankly, we should have been doing some of these a long time ago, forced us to record and make them available on demand for our families. Counselors. And so it's important that your child's teacher has information that's important. I mean, most of you may have students children who have been at their elementary schools since pre-K and kindergarten. And so that is a wealth of information that is there. We want to tap into that. So our school counselors will be meeting with grade 5 teachers April and May to learn more about them, to gather some important information to help make that transition back to the middle school as smooth as possible. Elementary schools will visit the middle schools. We're looking at in May. They've typically done that. They get on the bus, they come up to each of our middle schools, and we kind of walk them through the building again while it's live and in session. And then give them an opportunity to answer questions. Our school counselors typically do that orientation and give them some information about who they are and their role, as well as some information about the school. To our knowledge, and the hope is that if all goes well and we come back by the fourth quarter, that will be in person. It may be split into two groups depending on how large the class is that's coming up in terms of from each school, but our understanding is, by all accounts, we're planning on that happening. And then we have a sixth grade meet and greet at each of our schools, and that happens sometime in the late summer, early fall. And we all have open houses or curriculum nights, as if however you call it, in the fall, and that will happen in the fall of 2021. Okay. All right, I think, and just a couple things. I'm not sure. I will put what will happen is in the show notes when this is published. We'll put in this presentation so that you can have access to that link, and along with this webinar in the presentation, this webinar link is live. If you have some time, there is a parenting in the middle school with author Phyllis Fagel, and that's this or next Tuesday. And so there's a webinar for that. Usually if you register, and it's free, if you register for a webinar, they may send you the recording. If you can't make it at that particular time, I feel like it's like 5 o'clock. And then I highly recommend this book, Middle School Matters. And so it's a wonderful book about middle school, and the subtitle is the 10 key skills kids need to thrive in middle school and beyond, and how parents can help. So well done. She is a school counselor. And so if you can go to that webinar, but this is a great resource if you are first time particularly, but it's really, I mean, I have 2 kids, one in high school and now one in 8th grade. And I'm like, oh, this is so helpful. And so it's nice to think about it from an educator and a parenting perspective. And so I highly recommend those resources if you're looking to if you're a reader and a learner as well. Okay, so now it's time for questions, and we have a couple. I do want to start off with one because there was a question that came in, and Andrew mentioned it about bullying and our focus on trying to create a climate that is accepting of viewpoints of perspective. We talk about perspective taking. We talk about being respectful, responsible, good citizens at KP. All of us have some version of that. And so there was a question about someone being bullied because of their possible nationality. And so we are a school, and in a community, and in any community, we have to learn how to get along with each other and what that looks like, and to be respectful where each person comes from. So we haven't had a lot of, all of us can say in terms of bullying, are there comments that kids make that may not be appropriate? Absolutely. But they are opportunities for, we think about education first. Any kind of discipline should be rooted in education, learning how to make those choices, understanding why you say or do what you do and what we need to do differently. And so there's an opportunity for reconciliation where necessary. And then if we do a progressive discipline approach. And if that doesn't work, right, if we go along the levels, then we address it at other pieces in terms of, which could range from consequences, detentions, suspensions, and unfortunately expulsions. We have not had that for bullying, because usually when we talk about mean behaviors, and bullying is quite different, we talk about mean behaviors, we need to do so in a way that is education minded first, and an opportunity for kids to interact with each other and understand. I had 2 8th graders last week that had some communication issues, well, shall we say, and it had been going on for quite some time, and finally they just couldn't take it anymore and decided to tell the adults, or the adults found out. And it was a great learning opportunity to talk about how each played a role, what they could do differently, how we don't hold other people accountable for our own behavior, that we're responsible for our own behavior. And as I say to kids, that's all I'm going to hold you accountable is for your behavior, and we each have a role to play. And it's our job to kind of think, why did I respond this way? What might the other person think about it? What could I make a plan to do differently? And so we teach the behaviors and the expectations, and we respond accordingly. And I don't have a hard and fast line, and neither do Andrew or Chad about that, because it really does depend. Here's what you need to know. It will be addressed. That's what you need to know. It will be addressed. And your job as the parent is to encourage your child to come to us. But if they're not ready, then it's your job to come to the adults in the building so that we can address it before things escalate to a level that makes it more complicated. So I just want to say that, and then we can get to maybe some of the easier questions. Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, so I have the questions queued, the ones that Dave was able to answer a lot of those, which is great. So I'm going to start with the first question that wasn't answered by Dave. And the first question is from Heidi. It says, how does advisory work? Oh, you may answer those too? I can answer them too. So we have block scheduling this year, so it's a little bit different. We typically do have advisory every day, whether we're in block schedule or normal standard schedule. We look at it as a way to have a smaller, even smaller community of folks, connecting them with adult in the building is like a go-to person. Obviously, they'll connect with all their teachers, but advisory is something that's a little different and a little more special, I think. And we do have a lot of our social and emotional learning lessons and activities in advisory. We also talk about social justice as well as our character education, but it is something that's embedded in every day at all three middle schools. So it's not really structured in that way. I mean, we do have conversations and activities, but it's more of a free space that kids can share what they're thinking and feeling. Joy and Chad, anything else to add for that?
No, I would just say that this year is a little bit different in that we did have the structured lessons, which I think we'll probably see in some form continue into the future. But we still have had time for, really about the relationship building with the adults, trying to make sure that there's at least one other adult that kids feel comfortable with within each school building.
Right. All right.
So
next question. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Are you going to go through?
I'll run down if you guys want to take turns answering them.
Perfect.
Next question is from Veronica. It says, will middle school be hybrid? I'm assuming in the fall. Chad, you want to get that one?
Sure. So the answer is probably not. Hopefully not. So here's what I would say, because the questions are coming in. The superintendent is committed to getting our kids back in person as soon as it is safe to do so. And he's been very public and very consistent with that. Right now, our goal, we certainly don't have a date in mind yet because we don't know exactly week to week what it's going to look like. But our goal is to have kids back this year. And if that is the case, then we are all hoping that we would be back to a normal schedule for the fall. So I am planning for a normal start to the school year, and will only stop planning for a normal school year once I'm told otherwise. But we can't really answer that yet. The one thing I did want to reassure the folks on the call, if you're like me, you probably check the news, every day. And, depending on whatever app, there was a story today that I don't remember if it may have been one of the Connecticut stations or one of the national networks about, saying something like schools are preparing to start next fall in the hybrid model. And I'm shaking my head because those are states that right now are fully remote. Right. So they are much farther behind where we have been since the start of this school year. So there are a lot of states, a lot of big cities that the kids have been out of school fully remote the entire time, and they have not had plans, and they're just trying to figure out what that's going to look like. Unfortunately for people in places like Connecticut or West Hartford, where we have been making the hybrid plan work since September, that's a little bit disheartening just to see that type of headline. So if that's one of the questions, or that's the origin of your question, I think, we are in much better shape. I think we're in a good shape to be planning for a normal return to the fall. But again, we can't make any guarantees at this time.
All right. Next question from Jessica. How do you determine which team a child is placed on? Is it random or alphabetical or something else? Joy, you want to grab
both.
that?
It's both. When people ask how are teams selected, the computer does it. And so I will say we look to balance on a couple of things. We don't kind of hand schedule. We do use Power School, but what we do is we try to balance to make sure that there is a mix of schools, so that, you know, all one elementary school doesn't end up in a team. We balance for gender, we balance for race, ethnicity. We want to have a diverse group for skill and ability level. And so we do those pieces. So that means there was another question about team friends and friend placement. And here's what I'll say, because I said this in a parent chat that I had. I will say, given this year, we will probably have to be, we usually are with incoming 6th grade students. We want to make the transition as smooth as possible. And so for students who struggle socially with others and they really have a core group, we always ask to tell, usually the elementary teacher already tells the counselor. So we kind of have a sense of that. Parents and guardians or caregivers are always welcome to let us know directly. Here's what I know we do at KP is if you send me an email that says, Joy, I'd really like Susie Q to be with Frankie Flip Flop on this team. Can you make that happen? What I'll say is, well, you can have Frankie Flip Flop's parents contact me too to know. So, because I don't know if they get along, they don't get along, and that way I know both parents and caregivers have a sense of it. And then I say we will look at it closely. I don't always promise. I say we will look at it closely to make sure that's the case. This is a year, and I understand that, but it's a little different for elementary than it is for some of our middle schoolers who have been hybrid and aren't in the same cohort in the same way. I want you to know that at each of our schools, except for Bristow, because they just have one team, it's one grade level. We will do our best to make sure that that your child feels connected with a few friends, one or a few friends. Now, I have had some requests. I don't know about you, Andrew, where it's like they need to be with all 5 of these people, all 5 of them. That we can't do, and that's not fair, right? But we do want to make sure that they transition. And so, if you're worried, if your child specifically has a need or does struggles socially and make small connections, or your child is new to West Hartford, right? They just moved in this year and they have a small court. We understand that. Reach out to me, reach out to any of the administrators or the counselors, or let your elementary school teacher know, and they will let us know. So you are welcome to always have those conversations.
Yeah. So again, I'll just emphasize what Joy said. Yes, we welcome any request that you have. It does become difficult certain times depending on what the academic needs are as well. So we always look at requests by parents to see what we can do. Again, I just want to emphasize what Joy said is obviously if there's a social emotional need and we can support your child in that, we'll do our best to do that. But just asking to be with 5 of your closest friends just so you're all in the same classes, like being on the same team doesn't necessarily mean that they're in any classes together. That's the thing. I mean, we have pretty large schools, so students could find out we're on the same team and then they never see each other all day. So that's a
good point, Andrew. So people know you're on the same team. It's not like elementary where you travel with the same group. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they'll just travel with those 24 kids or 22 kids to each class. They get mixed up, right? And so I could have period 2 with these 3 folks that I know, and then I could have period 4 where I just know this person. Someone just asked in the chat, what do kids tend to do? They stick with their elementary friends. And then kind of said it probably depends on the child, and it does. Yeah. And sometimes that it is because they have different interests. They're growing, they're realizing different pieces. Sometimes it's a matter of all their friends might not be in those classes, so they go, oh, I met other people and new people, and so they hold on to those friendships and branch out into larger groups. The piece that as a parent you get used to or start to get used to is you don't always know all those new friends either, right? Because they're not all in that. And so it's like they're meeting all these new people and that's new too. So that's all part of it as well.
Right. All right. Next question. Chad, this will be for you. Other than size, is there anything else that is different about Bristow?
I mean, it's more awesome than the other 2 schools. So
there's fireplaces all over the place,
That's right. So, I mean, I think size is probably the biggest thing. That and the fact, just the physical space. We are the second newest building in the district other than Charter Oak. So it's a, they say beautiful spaces make beautiful people. And, it really is a joy to be there every day. I think if you were to ask our kids, they would tell you that. And because of the small size, I will say small size overall student population, but our class sizes are the same as they would be at Sedgwick or KP. So if that's sometimes, people are under the impression that we have smaller class sizes. That's not accurate. So our grade level is one team, and our team size is the same as it would be at either of the other two middle schools. But because we are such a small overall population, it is really, really difficult, and I would dare say impossible, to get lost. Where you're maybe one of 300 students, 250, 300 students at one of the other two middle schools, you're one of 105. We have weekly team meetings, which involves every teacher at the grade level, the counselors, the administrators, typically the school psychologist, if he's available at the time, where we talk about the kids every single week. So we have a pretty good sense of those students. And I know the same thing is true of Sedgwick and KP. It's just for us, there are fewer students to keep straight. And it's a little bit easier for us to do that. And it just has, again, it's just a very different feel. Not necessarily better or worse, but just you walk the halls at KP, you walk the halls at Sedgwick, they each have their unique character. Partly informed by the structure of the building. Sedgwick has the nice Art Deco architecture from when it was built. KP has the, sort of the mid-century, we'll call it the mid-century modern look. Joy, how about that?
The airport terminal look.
Right. And then Bristow has a combination of, we have Shepherd House, which is the administrative wing, which once belonged to Oxford School, which was Kingswood Oxford, which has sort of that private school feel to it. And then the new academic wing, which just has tons of light, beautiful open spaces. And it's really just a nice spot. There was a question I saw about IEPs and 504s. Was that answered?
No, that was the next on my list. It says, okay. Amanda says, how will 504s, IEPs be transitioned so that students needing supports will have them in place when school begins? So I'll answer that really quickly. So we'll have transition PPTs for students with IEPs and transition 504 meetings. So that will be coordinated between the middle schools and the elementary schools. So there'll be a formal meeting sometime this spring where families and the teachers will talk about what the needs are for your child before they transition to the middle school. So that will all take place before then. Next question, does each child have the same advisor for all 3 years? Or are they assigned one for each grade level? So the quick answer is they have a new advisor every grade level because the teachers are assigned to grade level. Is that true for you at Bristow too, Chad, right?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Let's see. Joy, it's, oh, you answered those advisory groups. Sorry, Joy. So parent says, hi, Ms. Gonzalez. Someone's worried about being bullied because of nationality.
I already answered that one.
Oh, sorry.
So Chad, can I say while we're talking about Bristow, two things. One, there was a question about the time for your orientation night. Yep. And then was it 6 or 6:30? Because there's something about mailing, said something else. And then the other one was younger siblings grandfathered in to Bristow, if you could answer that.
Right. So thank you. So yes, there is 6:30. We are going to follow up with a corrected mailing after tonight. I know originally it said 6 o'clock, but that was a typo. So it is 6:30, which is consistent with the other schools for both nights. And as far as being grandfathered, the way it works is the younger siblings, fifth grade sibling of students in 6th or 7th grade are automatically admitted to Bristow. We just need to know who they are. And for the most part, we are able to just pull that information directly from PowerSchool. The way it works for students in 8th grade, since they are leaving us this year, it's not automatic that their younger 5th grade sibling is going to come in. So it's really just the 6th and 7th grade, because that's a guarantee that those siblings are going to be in the same school. With the 8th grade student moving on to the high school, and then the incoming student starting 6th grade, they would not necessarily be, well, they wouldn't be in the same school, which is why there's that difference.
Okay. Next question. Are there orientation opportunities for kids entering the West Hartford Public Schools in 7th and 8th grade?
Yes. So we all have, it's not web per se, but we do offer students, usually we've had things, and I think we still did it this past summer. We have an orientation program specifically for rising 7th and 8th grade students who enter our schools, so that they know the lay of the land and what that looks like as well. Someone asked about magnet schools and how do you welcome students who are magnet schools. The good thing is, in this 5th to 6th transition, is everyone starts off at the same place. You might be coming from an elementary or a magnet school, but you're all coming to each of our middle schools, right? And so that's why we love Where Everybody Belongs Web. There's a series of orientation programs that happen. If your child is in a magnet school and we have one of our days where kids come in, you can call our office and we'll make sure we can tell you one of those days, and they can kind of sit with the kids to kind of go through the orientation as well, the in-school one that we have on any of those days in May. Welcome to do that if they'd like to. And sometimes people in from the community, neighborhoods, they actually have friends that they know, and so they might want to come when their neighborhood school comes because they know some kids in the neighborhood. You're welcome to do that as well. There's something about twins. I'll let you answer the lottery question for twins, Chad, but I will say for team placement for twins, that's dependent on the parents. So generally parents, because they just want to deal with one set of teachers, they ask for their twins to be placed on the same team, and usually it's just different classes. I've had at least 2 instances where parents have asked that their twins be placed on opposite teams, and those parents are fine. They feel like it's great for them to have their own identities, their own friendships, and parents can navigate having 2 teams of teachers. It really depends on what you want and what you think you can handle. Just let us know.
So I don't see the question about twins. Is it basically you have?
It's in the chat. With Bristol having a smaller population, what are your experiences with the students? Oh, nope, sorry. Hold on. I'm looking at the wrong. Oh, how does the 6th grade lottery work for twins? They reside in WeHa.
Okay. So the lottery process itself is really done by a computer and doesn't necessarily know, unless we are told otherwise, that they are twins. But if we have a situation where one of the students gets a low lottery number and the twin were to get a higher lottery number, we would effectively treat them, as one student, right? So let's say child A gets number 2 and child B gets number 61. We would treat them both as if they had a number 2, or whatever the case may be. We wouldn't be separating them.
Here's a question, Chad, about transitioning. With Bristol having a smaller population, what are your experiences with students transition to high school compared to KP and Sedgwick? This comes up a lot.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are trying to do is, we participate in the same transition programs as KP and Sedgwick. There's an impression, I think, that KP is closer to Hall and Sedgwick is closer to Conard. That's true physically, but they don't do any more things with the schools than Bristow does. So I think just the fact that we do send kids to both schools, I think there's that impression that we're, it's sort of, you're either on Conard's side or you're on Hall's side, and Bristow sort of walks both. We have a good relationship with both school principals. They keep us in the loop. They keep us informed of their activities, and we communicate with families. Our kids participate in the same transition. I know we had our meeting the other day, and both principals thanked us for having such high attendance of Bristol families that I know Conard specifically mentioned at their night. So there wouldn't be anything different for kids at Bristow than the other 2 schools.
Joe, I don't know where we are in the chat. I think I'm in a different spot than you. I don't want to ask questions that have been answered. There's a question here from Kristen about, I guess this may be a question on everyone's mind. I says, will there be extra help or assistance for sixth graders who may have fell behind due to remote learning? That's a great question. I mean, what I anticipate will happen is that at central office level, including our supervisors for each grade level, I think they are going to review where kids are at this very moment in each grade level and make some adjustments in the curriculum based on where they are. But we do have a lot of opportunities for extra help in general, whether in a pandemic or it's remote or not. Teachers do make themselves available. Obviously, with remote learning, it's online, but we anticipate if things are back to normal, that we'll have our after school, homework centers and other things where we can really give kids extra assistance. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Joy, at all.
That's something I think it's important to know that the district's talking about that. We know that there might be some pieces, but when we find out, we address it, right? And so we have Saturday Academy, we have, as Chad and Andrew mentioned, we have before and after school help, but there may be and probably will be some specific summer programming that's offered this summer, as well as some series of academies, that's what I'll call them, that might be offered throughout the year. And so just know that the universal screens that your child's teacher is doing is giving them that information. And so if there's something that they don't feel like they'll be able to address before the year is over, they'll definitely let us know and we'll plan accordingly.
Right. So Dave answered one of these questions, but I just wanted to add, it says, T had a question of, how do you get the links for the virtual information nights for, I guess, all three schools? So we have our mailing set to go out next week. Joy, you may have mailed yours already. Did you mail yours out already?
I think it went out this week or went out today. It would have went out today or tomorrow. It's going out.
So you should receive a letter from any or all of us, and then we'll have those links posted on our websites as well. We're about a month out, so we have a few weeks until all those occur. Veronica said, if my child receives specials in a subject, is that still available in middle school? You think that's a question?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure what specials means. Veronica, if you can be
Veronica, if you want to
more
clarify
specific.
and just post another chat about that, we'll be happy to answer that. If a student has both instrumental music and chorus in elementary, is that still possible in the middle school, or do they need to choose between the two? Yeah, you can have one instrumental and one choir. They can carry two. If it just so happens that your child does three things, that would be very tricky to do in the middle school model. I think you could probably talk to us about it, but usually the limit is two because that's kind of the structure of our school day. Eric has a question of, what are the after school programs?
Oh, so many. You mean the virtual ones now, Eric, if you're asking that now. So I will say we just opened up, I don't know if you guys did, but Play. So Play is a before kind of school program. And Play program, it's just, it's cooperative games, etc. And so because of a parent asked, like, hey, can we do something? We have a small 15, normally pre-COVID, it was like 50 or 60 kids would come in from 6:40 in the morning. God bless those parents who would be like dropping them off, some of them still with like their coffee cup and their robe on. No, I'm serious, because that's really early. 6:40 to 7:40, an hour of just active opportunity and getting that blood flowing for the brain. And so now it's 15 because we have to limit the sign up. And we've been able to open that up for 6th and 7th grade, and we'll do for 8th. Both of our schools have, and I don't know if you do too, Chad, we have Minecraft that's going on right now. There's a series of short things, like we have a kind of no bake cooking class that's going on. There's Dungeons and Dragons happening. There's Anime Club is really popular among our students. We have book club. We were doing Kids Lit at KP. We have a social justice film club. We have diversity club. Mock trial exists at our schools as well. So that's happening too. Really, it's like as they build it, as they dream it up, like that's what ends up coming up too. Kids are asking for things. And so if we're able to make it happen and we find it, we have science club that's happening. And actually our science person does little kits and the parents come and pick them up and they do experiments with them. And so those are the virtual offerings. Chad, Andrew, what kind of offerings do you have at your school that I didn't mention? I know it really is dependent.
Ornithology is a great COVID activity. Watching birds from your house window.
Don't make fun of that. Do not make fun of that. My son
we have a lot of kids.
Serious.
No, we have a lot of kids that do it.
And our bird feed budget has gone up dramatically this winter.
Very nice.
Yeah, nothing else to add. We have a bunch of the same ones.
It's the same. Yeah.
So course selections are due in February, but final decisions about Bristol aren't until March. I'll fill the survey out anyway. Yes, because it doesn't matter what school you go to. We need to know that information. And so whether you're at Bristol, KP, or Sedgwick, we need to know what your language is. And what your instrument is. It's important for those sections. To that point, I did see a question about Learning Lab. What is Learning Lab? If your child does not take your performance music, then they will be in Learning Lab. Learning Lab is effective. I need to come up with a better term, but it's like a study hall. It is a learning opportunity for students to do some work, to meet with teachers if they have questions. If a student was absent, Learning Lab is where they would take the quiz or talk with the teacher about what they didn't understand, as well as get started on some homework. Some students find it very helpful to kind of have that opportunity to get a jump start on things, or for some to finish some assignments up so they can go home with a clear conscience in terms of what they need to do as well.
So I think we missed one. It says, when does school start and end?
Good point.
This year or next year?
Let's do this year and then normal, like in a hybrid and not in a hybrid.
Yeah, so this year our bell schedule is from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. However, the students do return home, and there's some afternoon online sessions that our teachers do with the students that are learning remotely for the week. But our typical bell schedule, Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays, is from 8 a.m. to 2:50. And then on Wednesdays, just like the elementary school, we have an abbreviated day for teacher development where we go from 8 o'clock to 1:30. So that's our typical bell schedule, and we anticipate it, like Chad said, unless someone tells us differently, that next fall will be the same. Twins, you already got that. Late buses. You want to talk about that a little bit, Joy? Late buses?
There are late buses, and the only thing you should know is probably not the same stop. There are combined stops because there are late buses. So when we do have them, activities typically run from 3 to 4 physically, and the late bus will come, and so they drop them off at a more centralized location, not too far, but just not the same where they got picked up in the morning or dropped off on their normal route. But yes, there is definitely transportation, not for the morning things though, for like play or something like that. We don't have it for that, but for the after school stuff, absolutely.
And a point of clarity is, even if a student doesn't ride the bus in the morning, they can take the late bus home and drop them off in close proximity to their house. So whether they're bus riders or not, they can definitely take the late bus. I do have a couple. Go ahead, Joy. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. So these are, Robert has about teams. Our teams class-based, academic ability. I would say that the teams, the courses offered on each team is very diverse. So we may have standard classes, honors classes, and intervention classes all in the same team. So it's not like we have one group of students that are all honor students on a team. It doesn't work that way. We definitely want to make sure that the teams are balanced in every capacity that we can. So just wanted to answer that question really quick. Can students take more than one foreign language? I don't believe so. Joey, right? They cannot. I don't think our schedule allows it, unfortunately. But whatever foreign language they take in middle school, they are committed to do that for the 3 years. And obviously, if that's a concern, you can talk to us about it. But once they get to high school, they don't have to continue with the language they did in middle school. They can absolutely choose and do something different. Chad, did you have something?
No, nothing to add to that. I'm just looking at some of the other comments.
John has a question. Do students rotate through their classes with the same cohort of kids? So no, so the same 20 kids that are in first period of science do not transition to second period of social studies. No, no, no. They intermingle. So, like I said, we have teams of 100 students, and my son has had a very good friend on his team in 1 year and never saw him in a single class. He was always in a different class, but they were on the same team. We also light buses, we got that. There's a question about touring Bristow. I saw tours for KP.
Right. So we will be sending out by the end of this week an update, and in it is going to have, we will have 2 dates for live tours, and they will be before the deadline for the notification. So those are going to be very, very small groups. We'll be having, they will be led by student ambassadors. There will be after hours. Obviously, students will not be in the building, but we are going to limit that to 1 student and 1 parent per family. And we'll be doing small groups of, a pair from one family, a pair from another family led by a student. And that will be coming up in March. So check your email. That will be coming out by the end of this week.
Yeah, same for Sedgwick and same for KP. We've agreed at KP and Sedgwick, because our single orientation night's a little bit later than Bristol, that during the week of the 22nd is when KP and Sedgwick will host tours as well. And that information will be coming out when we send our letter.
We want to answer a few more questions
Yes.
before we let you go. I will say this, there was a question about web, a little more detail about web, and say more about that. So as Andrew said, web is typically 8th grade students who are mentoring 6th grade students. And so the biggest piece is we start our recruitment process in about a month for those mentors. And then usually by midsummer, early August to mid-August, web leaders are identified, they're assigned an advisory, and they start to make calls to those students. So the first interaction with 6th graders will be hi, my name is Joy, I'm your web leader, I'm excited to welcome you. Did you notice that our web orientation is on this date? This is what you need to bring, which is usually themselves. And then we have a web orientation day, where all of the 6th grade students, we were actually able to, each of us had our own orientation. We were able to do that outside this late fall. So we have them they meet in their advisory group. So that's the first interaction those students have with their advisory group. They meet in those advisory groups. They do fun connected games. They tour the school again. So remember, this is a March tour, a May tour, and now they're doing it again in August. They tour the school again. And then for us at KP, those web leaders stay connected throughout the year. And so on a monthly basis, they go into the classroom, they lead a web lesson. They may do some social things with the students, so they stay connected with them. It kind of mirrors for people who might have kids at high school. It's the Link Crew program. So it's similar to the Link Crew program where you have older students mentoring younger students. And so I'd say where we are at KP, it's so funny that you asked that question about how does it evolve over time, is now we've got the orientation day down. Like, it's phenomenal. They know it. It's awesome. We even have the lessons that they do. They come down monthly. What we want to work on at KP is those social connections, building up those other pieces, those informal mentoring opportunities. So, my vision is like when the kid is walking down the hallway, a 6th grader is going to go, that's my web leader down there, like in the middle of the thing, because that's how often they see them. That's how connected they feel. Like, that's my evolution of web. But you just should know that it is an opportunity for older students to have a formalized leadership opportunity. And for our younger students, our 6th grade students, not to worry about those big bad 8th graders. Wait, 8th graders are actually there to mentor, to help. They are good citizens, and that's what we want to do. So,
all right, we have a couple more questions, Joy. I don't know how many more we're going to go through, but there's one about school start time. So 7:40 is usually what we say is doors are open, kids are welcome to come in. If for some reason the buses come a little bit early, we do have a supervised space. They want students to they can't be in the hallways without supervision before school, but 7:40 is typically the time that we have. Another quick question about schedules getting sent home. That happens about 2 weeks prior to the school beginning, team assignments, but the actual final schedule isn't finalized until students come the first day, because as things change, we're always changing, manipulating some things. So we do send out team assignments and advisory, but kids will receive their first and final schedule by the end of the day.
It's a great question about phones, Joy. Joy, that's one of your favorite topics. Do you want to talk about that?
I just love how they phrased it. Aside from burning them in the boiler room, yes.
That is correct.
So here's what we'll say. We say all the time, a phone at sixth grade is a parental decision. It is a family decision. But here's what you should know. Not every sixth grader does not have a phone. They do not. They do not need a phone to operate in middle school at all. So those things are not true. You have to do with your comfort level. Andrew says something I think is important too. We have to pass a test to get our license to drive. Isn't that what you say, Andrew? Yet sometimes we give out a phone, which can be just as dangerous without any of that. And so as a family, if you're going to decide to say that we think our child is old enough to have a phone, then you as a parent or caregiver, in my opinion, and this is what I had to do for myself to decide, am I willing and able to monitor it in the way that it should be monitored? So I said no. For in our family, it won't be till like spring of 8th grade that my daughter got one, and now my son is chomping at the bit, and like it'll be my turn, because I didn't have the wherewithal to monitor it the way I think it should be monitored in terms of their apps, where they're going, what does that look like? And remember, when you're talking about a cell phone, you have to make decisions. Are you also talking about letting them have access to all kinds of apps? Are you willing to shut those things down, look at the settings, do the parental things, monitor how much time they're going to be on it, decide as a family what apps? You won't be on Instagram, you will be on Instagram, now no TikTok, no Snapchat. Like, what does that look like? Come up with your plan as a parent unit and a caregiver unit, and then sit down and talk with your child. But if they say they must have it to be a successful sixth grader, I assure you that is not the case. And I will say I am really pleased we do not have an issue at our middle school, because we say to them, if you have it, it is off and away. That's where it needs to be, off and away, unless a teacher for some reason asks you to take it out, they don't need to, but if they do, it needs to be off and away. Now, am I going to tell you, as I saw the Instagram, I think, Dave, I was looking at it today, I had posted, and some kid put, like, I looked at how many likes came in during the school day. I was like, hey, what's going on? You shouldn't be liking Instagram during the school day. I did notice they were 8th graders, so they tend to be very deft at how they get to the cell phone. But we haven't had, I can't remember the last time someone gave me a kid's cell phone because it was out when it didn't need to be out. So they're very respectful. It's a parental and a family decision. Think about what mental and emotional energy you have at this moment. And if you don't have it, it's okay to say no. It's okay.
Yeah, so the question follows up about a specific policy. So the policy is basically just what Joyce said. If you have it, it needs to be off and out of sight. Within the board policies, if they do become distracting, we do reserve the right to temporarily, confiscate them from the students and surrender them back to the parent. And if it becomes more of a problem, then we have a longer conversation with families. But I would say for the most part, kids, with an exception here or there, kids are responsible and respectful. A few things Joy's talking about, kids doing some likes on Instagram, but it's not pervasive during the school day, and it's not anything that, instead of focusing on math, they're sitting there secretly hiding and, doing TikTok or some other wretched thing. I will say we did. So my wife and I did break down this year. Our oldest is in 7th grade. And we did have the decision after much, consternation to, get her one, but it's also a little bit different because, where we live physically, we don't live in town. And my wife works in a different district. So it was a little bit harder for her to get in touch with us, and takes a little bit longer for us to get to her if she needs us. So that was just something that we had decided to do. There was a couple questions about clubs and activities. I'm just going to sort of lump them together. One related to sports and another about how many clubs one student's allowed. We don't have team sports in the way that some schools have. Once upon a time when I was a young man, I would coach. And, I found myself, they needed a middle school softball coach one year, and I found myself doing that. We don't have team sports in that way, but we do have intramurals when we're allowed to do that. So those activities would vary. They're after school. They're not competitive against other schools. They just sort of pick up team situations. And in terms of how many clubs, I did see that Dave mentioned students can be in as many clubs as they would like. I would say, it makes me think one of my favorite movies. It's a Wes Anderson film, Rushmore. I know it's older at this point, but as many clubs as they can handle until it gets in the way, right? So there are times where if you know the film, you know what I'm talking about. If they can handle a lot of different student activities and it doesn't get in the way of their studies, then that's fine. But if they are so overcommitted that they're not doing anything well, then that's a time where, we'll have a conversation with a family about, setting some priorities and some smart limits on what the kids are involved with.
I think we're good. So listen, we will have our orientation nights. I remember this one. So Chad, you have to say yours again because you have two. March 15th for Cedric and KP. When is yours, Chad?
The 4th and the 8th. We've traditionally always had the two. And we'll just continue that again this year.
Okay. And then, you'll learn about our school specifically. If you're able to, if you're kind of thinking about which one, try to sign up for the tours. We will say that, we may not be able to cycle everyone through, but if you really say, oh, we're really trying to make a decision, I always feel it's important to have your child walk through both. And people go, how do I know? And you look at your kid and say, you walk through both, which one feels like that's the place where you want to be. And that's the right choice, because as someone said, Veronica, you were so awesome. Every single school is a great school. And so it's really about the fit that works for you. We'll end on this one because it's the homework question that we didn't get one. He didn't phrase it like, or the parent didn't phrase it like the homework question, but what's the workload expectation? And we say it depends. And so for some students, they find that 6th grade in terms of the workload is much more than their 5th grade experience. And for others, they feel like it's just about the same. And so we try to identify, what do we say, about 60 minutes of work a night in terms of homework. And so it kind of averages like that for 6th grade. But here's the reality. If, one child might take longer and one homework that is, the teacher says is 20 minutes, it might take them 40. Whereas for another child, it might take them 20. And so the important piece is that if you feel like it is a weight that is becoming unmanageable for your child, you please encourage them, or you along with as their advocate, to reach out to the teachers to talk about that. But it really does depend. I think that what we'll talk about later on in our orientations and then in our later orientations with families is how do you set up, and that's this book here, like how do you set up the right spaces and the right things that get them working on those skills so that they can be successful. And so that's the other part of our work as middle school parents, to learn how to be managers, to support them in finding out how to set their priorities and manage those priorities. I'm telling you, you are in for a fun ride. You really are. All right. If you need anything, the only honors courses available, look at that last minute question, is for math at this particular time for 6th grade. It's just math. And then in 7th and 8th grade, they add on honors language arts.
Just one more to add. So if your student is in Quest Math or advanced in language, they may be placed in the grade level above. So as a 6th grader, they may take 7th grade honors math or a different language. So those are some other options. I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you. All right, we'll put, just give me a minute to kind of get rid of some notes, and I'll put the copy of the PowerPoint or the slideshow in the show notes. You can go back to this presentation. It will stay on YouTube. You have the link. I don't think we've made it public, right, Dave? So, but you do have the link for it. If you have a friend that missed it, just say, hey, just go to that link, that same link. It lives there. And we hope to see you at our orientations in about a month. I can't believe it. In about a month. Thank you for coming. Thank you. It means so much to see you in the chat, to know we're just not talking to each other, although we enjoy that. It's nice to know that there were other people on the line. We appreciate your questions and your attention. And we hope this has given you a little bit of a woosah as you enter into the middle school transition. Be well.